Hello, everyone, and good morning, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is our second to last guest for the month. Today is an actor, model, NAMA nominee for 2019's Best Music Video, singer, songwriter, sketchbook artist, and author who resides in Texas with her family. And she is the author of the book Nothing But Bones, which, as goes as followed, you all heard the story of the Tooth Fairy. But what about their darker cousins, the Bone Fairy? Do all monsters like them go bump in the night, or are there worse monsters hiding in plain sight? Let's take a trip to Albania in the fall of 1912. This is the beginning of an unlikely and horrific love story and haunting Brothers Grimm style. So, without further ado, viewers and listeners, let's give a huge round of applause to our next guest on the show and third Raven to appear on the channel, Miss Raven Diamond. Raven, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, Raven. I am so excited to have you here on the show. And honestly, I had a chance to read a little bit of Nothing But Bones. You do not hold back the imagery and everything. My goodness.
Yeah. Mostly that's because I personally have hyperphantasia, so I can see everything clear as day in my head, and I want the readers to be able to see that too. So I do my best to describe, the scenes, the actions, and different things that are going on, so they feel like they are there watching the movie.
Nice. Not gonna lie though, the Bone Fairy kind of reminded me of the creature from the Hellboy movies, the second one with the demonic tooth fairy. Don't know why, but that's the image that I got. Probably wrong, but reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, that is terrifying.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like a little bit terrifying. He's not supposed to be, the chipper chief fairy. This is supposed to be more horrifying, which is why it's an unlikely romance.
Ah, okay, okay. So before we dive into your background, Raven, as an author and many more, is there a little known fact you'd like to share with the viewers and listeners, possibly something that not a lot of people may know about you?
Um, I guess that would be I'm a mom of two. So unless like you know me personally, a lot of times you wouldn't realize that, I'm actually a mom of two. I am trying to become a full-time author, but I do still have a 9 to 5, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've got to support my kids.
Nice. All right, all right. And also in your bio, you are so much more than just an author. You are a sketchbook artist, singer, songwriter, actor, model, NAMA nominee for the 2019 Best Music Video. That is absolutely insane. So I guess let's just start at the beginning, Raven, of your journey. How did you go into these different fields, but ultimately still keep your passion of creating something that people can enjoy?
So with modeling, I started that back probably I was like 19 in college. Um, and I did that locally for some fashion designers that I knew and had some friends that were, making clothes and things like that. So I kind of got involved with that. I've always been writing since probably about middle school. So that was always a thing that I did. And music, I was in music with school on and off. So I made a song one day, and I don't know how it happened, but basically the music video for one of the songs ended up at the 2019 Native American Music Awards. And I actually had to go to Niagara Falls, New York to go to that award ceremony. I did get top six. I didn't win, but they did like top six or you won. So that was really cool. Um, I just, you don't know what you're going to accomplish if you don't try. I mean,
Mm.
the worst I could be told is no. Okay, that's fine. Move on. But if I hadn't taken the risk, I might not have gotten there. I did the sketchbook project, which sadly my books were part of the sketchbook fire,
Mhm.
which sucks, but at least I did it. There's a lot of things in my life that all you have to do is do it. Yes, it could be a no, but a lot of times I didn't run into a no. I ran into, okay, let's try this. Um, and it just seemed to work out for the best. So that's what I keep doing.
Nice. Now, what about Nothing But Bones? How did that story come about? And from an author's perspective, were you always a creative person telling stories, or did that come about later in life?
So I definitely was a big reader. And that kind of turned into writing. My mom actually likes to write as well. So that kind of instilled some desire there. With Nothing But Bone, how that specifically came about is there was this little picture thing on Facebook. It's like we've all heard about the tooth fairy, but what about their darker cousins, the bone fairy? And I started thinking about that and started thinking about the horror genre in general and the romance genre as well. And the story just kind of came to life.
Nice. All right. So, speaking of the story, Raven, let's now pull back the curtains and talk about the behind the scenes of how exactly Nothing But Bones truly came about. Let's start with the title first. So, as you were developing the idea of the story, how did the title come about? Was it an inspiration? Was it something that you have heard or seen? Or was it something else?
So I was trying to find the link between the two faded, the bone faded, and the only real link was bone. So essentially, the story had to be about bones because teeth are bones and normal bones are bones. And it's going to be nothing but bones. And I wanted to use the title in the story somehow, and it just kind of built off of that. Originally, this story used to be like 2,000 words, and it was part of an anthology called The Leash Between Life and Death. It was to support plant a billion trees or plant a million trees. And then I didn't leave it there. I felt like there was something missing. It was incomplete. Later on, it ended up in a different anthology called There's a Hint in That Bear Holler. That was to benefit the people in the rural North Carolina and Appalachian area after they had that hurricane. I was still kind of tweaking it even then, and now it's become a full standalone novella. It went from about 2,000 words all the way up to like 16, 17,000 words, but now it's finally complete and it is open ended. I don't know if I'll make a sequel, as I kind of want the reader to decide where it goes,
Okay.
but if I get a good idea, then I will.
All right. All right. And once you finally decided on the title of the story, Raven, when it came to developing the overall story itself from beginning to end, did you consider yourself to be a detailed outliner or would you consider yourself a more spontaneous writer?
Definitely the start spontaneous. I mean, there are sometimes scenes that I want and I don't know how to get there. So it's about getting to that scene and going from there. Sometimes I would literally just use parentheses and says, character figures out something here. And then I would write the scene that I wanted and I would go back and kind of insert things.
All right. All right. All right. And as a sort of fan question to start us off, Raven, one of my viewers asked, when writing Nothing But Bones, and this could be as spoiler heavy or non spoiler as possible, so up to you. What was probably your favorite and or most difficult scene to bring to life?
So I would say the most difficult scene was probably the ending where he saves her. And I don't want to say exactly what he saves her from, but saves his land interest from a certain event. And that's because I had to toe the line with what is good for the story and what is too much, as a
Mm,
very thin line with the what was going on in that particular scene. My favorite scene to write um, was probably when he first meets her and it's his first impression of the person he's about to start falling in love with. Um, because he kind of tells himself, "Oh, wait, it's probably just her eyes that I'm interested. Oh, mating season's coming up. It's probably that." Like he does everything to dismiss it,
Mm.
um, and just knowing the end of it, I very much liked writing that scene.
Nice. Okay. Okay. And speaking of the characters themselves, again, you can go as spoiler heavy or spoiler free if possible. Another fan question one of my viewers asked is when writing the characters in your story, how did you showcase their complexity, but also their authenticity? Meaning, how do you show that for these specific types of characters, it makes sense for them to exist in this type of storytelling?
So one of the things with the characters is I actually had to do quite a bit of research. I had to make sure that, for the time frame that they have certain ideals that they hold close to their heart. For the area, I had to make sure that they wore certain types of attire. And another way that I really brought them to life is the main character's weakness or ability, whichever you want to call it.
Mm.
The fact that he physically feels others' emotions. Because then you were able to get a look inside what he felt and how the other characters were reacting to that situation.
All right. All right. And ultimately, when writing this, Raven, what was not only the goal you had for this story, but also the promise you're making, not just to yourself as the author, but also to your prospective readers?
So my goal was to explore a in-between genre that's not often written about, the horror romance, um, but doing it in a way that was believable, even when you have fantastical elements like the main character not necessarily being human. And I just wanted to explore how this character would interact, having something that is both a power and a weakness, to a situation that could be very real for that time. The sickness, the abuse, all of these things are very, very real and rooted in reality. So, how does something not real interact, especially in this niche genre? Um, and I wanted to explore that as a writer, but I also wanted to take my readers into a situation that, you know, not everything is black and white. There are certain things that are very black and white.
Mm.
But when is a monster not a monster, and when is a person a monster? That was another
Ooh,
thing I wanted to play with.
nice. It's almost like the whole Frankenstein's monster arguments, like who is actually the monster? Is it the creature that was made by Frankenstein, or is it Frankenstein himself? Although I think a lot of us can agree that the Frankenstein's monster is the byproduct of the ambitions of Dr. Frankenstein and his attempts to pretty much play God and be the modern day, well, he is the modern day Prometheus through his creation. But that is a very good analysis to really have, Raven, in storytelling. And that's something that we're also going to be touching on when we get to the business side of being author in regards to, understanding the genre and our audience and so forth. So going forward, when writing Nothing But Bones, I imagine there are probably days where you may have struggled with probably bringing a scene to life or characters, or the plot wasn't going the way you wanted, and you probably encountered a writer's block. And even after overcoming it and getting it published, there probably was a hesitancy to let people know, saying, hey, I just finished a book. I want to share with people, because talking with people on this show, there is that hesitancy to let people know that we are authors. And when we do tell people that we're authors, there's this mixed reaction that kind of deters people away from us and so forth. So for you, Raven, this is a two-part question. How did you overcome writer's block in your writing when creating Nothing But Bones? And then after that, how did you overcome and deal with the imposter syndrome that sort of comes with the territory of being an author?
So with writer's block, some of the things I try to do is I try to use music that fits the mood. Uh, try to see if that's going to help me. If that doesn't, sometimes I will either do a palette cleanser where I go read a book that's completely opposite so I can get everything completely off my mind, come back blank and fresh. Or I will read something in a similar genre. If there's a particular problem I'm not sure how to solve, I'll see how a couple other authors did it. I won't just look at one, I'll look at a couple different authors because I don't want to be influenced heavily by one and accidentally, rip off their writing. I want to read a couple different authors so I can get a broad view of it to make my own switch. Sometimes you got to step away for a day and come back. Sometimes you use these little tricks and helps. There's no true one answer. It's whatever's going to help you that day. And then when it comes to imposter syndrome, I've dealt with that in a lot of different fields, as you can tell. The thing at the end of the day is, am I doing something that is making me happy? Yes.
Right.
Are the people around me, supportive, happy with it? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And how does that make me feel about it? Now, strangers, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
Because some people will absolutely love my writing. Some people, my writing is not their cup of tea at all. I've literally been part of beta reads where I've had one beta reader absolutely hate everything that I did. And I had the other one that thought it was the greatest thing they ever read. So it really just depends on what you want to listen to, but also take everything that they said and see, is there any consistency? Is there any issues that you actually are facing? I mean, you just got to take everything with a grain of salt at the end of the day. And it's your willpower to get past it. And what are you going to be happy with it? Because nothing's going to be perfect. Nothing will ever be perfect. So is it just at a stage where you're happy with it?
Absolutely. Very true. Very, very true, Raven. And this kind of goes into what I like to call the reflective questions of the interview. And to start us off with that, there is this question I want to ask you, and that's, of course, what does it mean to be an author in the digital age? Because the digital age has greatly changed the playing field for authors in the publishing industry. I mean, 20 years ago, you would not think of, small press publishing, hybrid publishing, or even indie publishing as a grade form publication. Everyone viewed those as lesser forms, and trad was the dominant. But in recent years, small press, hybrid, and indie have taken the publishing industry by storm, and you can't even tell the difference between a traditional book and one that's published through the other avenues. It's gotten that good, and a lot of people are shifting to these other options because the traditional publishing road has become a gambling den, in a sense of all of these publishers put so much effort into promoting these books, but they don't get their investment back. Meanwhile, you have small local books that are slowly gaining traction and ultimately becoming national successes and worldwide success, and all the power to them. But with that said, the digital age is a double-edged sword. I'm sure you've probably talked with a lot of other authors and a lot of creatives who have used social media as a platform to help boost their brand. It's a double-edged sword, as I said. It is beneficial, but it's also harmful, emotionally draining, taxing, and we leave ourselves exposed to the dangerous side of social media. So with all that said, Raven, for you as a creative individual, what has still disciplined you to still be the person who you are and hold true to your values, to your core as a creative individual?
So with the digital age, things have changed a lot, like you said. I try to keep myself grounded by understanding the difference between, my creative vision and business.
Right.
I understand why traditional publishers choose what they choose, do what they do, promote what they promote. I get it. They want show bets, they want trends. It's becoming fast fashion in the publishing industry. I get that. That's not for me. Personally, I would rather go to indie publishers or self-publish, and I'm actually creating my own publisher for tax reasons and things like that, so I can publish my own work underneath my own publishing name. Um, and I just feel like that's going to be the best for me. With technology, what I do is I use several different forms. I Google Docs for rough drafts. I use OneNote for notes. I have Atticus for formatting. I have Word with the editor, so I can check the grammar. I can check for geopolitical stuff. I can check for a lot of different things. And I do a lot of the work on myself. I even have editing books to double check things. I watch YouTube videos and TikTok videos and
Mm.
Facebook videos about, grammar and editing and writing and marketing, um, to make sure that I'm fully prepared. And what you put in is what you're going to get out. Now, I also know that we have, the big thing, AI. Personally,
Yes.
I'm not going to use it. I've read books that are written by AI, and they are very flat. Everything
Mm.
feels flat. I'm not getting the depth that I normally get. And so I don't particularly like reading those, but I also know that they fill a need. There are people that like trashy TV. There are going to be people that like trashy books because they have the traits that they want in them. And occasionally I read trashy books because they have traits that I want in them. Now, I get that. I get that they probably have their now niche space, but that's not the point. That's my process is I will write this, I will do this because I enjoy the process and I want to get a story that you haven't heard before. Granted, every story is one of the original four, man versus man, man versus the elements, man versus God, man versus society, all that kind of stuff. But I want to make my own twists. I
Mm.
want something that you might not be expecting. Granted, I will do foreshadowing, so you can try to expect it and you'll be like, oh, that's why she said that. But I don't think I'm ever going to dip my toes in the have Claude or OpenAI generate everything for me. I'm going to stick with the process that I've had for years.
Mm. All right. All right. And on this topic of AI, this goes into another thing I would like to hear your thoughts on, because AI has advanced so far and so fast in a short amount of time. And it's trickling down into the publishing industry. And a lot of authors and readers are not happy with the way AI has been pushed into the writer's room, so to speak, when it has no business. Now, yes, AI as a tool and as a feature is going to be with us until the end of time. There's no escaping it. And there's nothing wrong with it. You can use it as a tool. But what people do have an issue with is generative AI. That is probably the one form of AI that has no business in the creative process. And yet, as you said, there are individuals that have used generative AI to write books, and unfortunately creates a false sense of creativity because it's mass produced. And as you said, it's very, very flat. There's no human element behind it, there's no emotion. So that begs the question, in your opinion, Raven, unless things change, we are going to find ourselves on this teeter totter, so to speak, between the golden age of writers and authors and creatives and the dark age of generative AI and no more human first content.
So, yes, I know that we'll be on that teeter totter, but I know there's also going to be individuals like me who we're not going to use it.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not. Granted, I mean, we may still be tricked by things, like when we're designing our covers, we may accidentally grab something that's AI unknown to us. Um, but we're going to definitely try not to do that. Uh, Unfortunately, we're going to have to get very good at spotting those tricks.
Yes.
I constantly am watching videos like to determine, what photos are real, what are not, what to look out for, what is generative, all of that, because I don't want to accidentally make my cover and have something that I thought was real that is actually AI. So that's something I'm educating myself on, and I do my best to not have it. But there's always going to be that like 1% chance It might accidentally happen. I'm hoping it doesn't, but if it does, just know that my writing is my writing. I don't aim to be like a specific writer. I just want to tell the stories that are in my head. I want the readers to enjoy those stories. I understand some people may need to use it because they need to make bills or they've got a disability. Um, but I don't think I could ever use a program that was built off of that.
Mm.
That's what hurts my soul as a writer. Now, if they had gone about it the correct way, had people paid and compensated for their work, if they had people like specifically write for that AI, that would be a different story. I still probably personally wouldn't use it, but I would feel a little bit better about the people that are. I can't tell someone not to use it. I don't live their life. I'm not on their proof. Just personal preference. I'm not going to use it.
Absolutely. Very, very true. And as another reflective question, which is also a fan question, looking back on your journey professionally and personally, is there anything you would have done differently in your life?
Um, I probably should have gotten editing books a lot sooner. I definitely procrastinated on that. Um, and and that's just because I released things that probably needed to be edited. Most of those things have been taken down since then, but I definitely rushed certain things. I was done. I wanted to be out there ASAP, and now I know, no, I need to spend a little bit more time to work with my craft, and now I'm a much better writer, and so now I'm trying to fix the things that weren't that good. Um, but other than that, there's been a lot of mistakes I've made,
Mm.
but I don't think that I would be the same person if I didn't make those mistakes. I'm very stubborn, very headstrong. I don't think if future me told, past me to avoid certain things, I would do this. I needed to learn certain lessons.
Right. Very true. Very, very true. And now that kind of goes into the business side of being an author, which is probably my favorite segment of the interview. So, as an icebreaker question for this part, Raven, when you finished writing Nothing But Bones and were uh, in the process of deciding how to market it and so forth, what really surprised you about that aspect of the author's journey?
So, what surprised me about that aspect is I am currently in the midst of about to publish it, but in doing all of that, I discovered, things about ISBNs that, yeah, Amazon gives you a free one, but then you're not the publisher on record. And that's very important for a number of different key reasons. I also learned about how to get your book into the Library of Congress. So that's pretty cool. That's something that I will be doing. I learned a lot of different things about how traditional publishing works, how indie publishing works, and even learning how to set up my own publisher and why that would be a good idea for tax reasons. And it could also help, some of my buddies that are writers that I think their writing needs to be heard. And I would like to give them a platform to be heard.
Mhm.
So it started my journey on, making my own publisher, which everything should be finalized here pretty soon. So that way I can go ahead and officially release. Um, but it definitely was a learning journey. And social media has also been a learning journey. I've learned about programs that, can post to several different social media sites at once. I can schedule friends out. I don't have to be glued to my phone, to my computer, to my tablet 24/7. Um, I found ways that'll make it streamlined. So that's been a pretty big learning curve.
Nice. Very, very nice. And speaking of learning curve, let's now talk about probably one of the most important things about marketing one's book, and that's, of course, understanding the audience. Now, I'm sure you'll definitely agree, Raiden, that for us authors, we are the target audience first and foremost. But when we go down that path to publishing our stories, that's when we have to really take a good look and figure out, okay, where does this book fall under in terms of genre? what reader group or age group is going to be interested in a book like this? And thirdly, how familiar is the source material and yet still new that it's going to get the reaction that we want? And all these questions and more are sometimes very challenging, and sometimes it takes a lot of hit and misses to get it right. And we find ourselves as authors this tightrope balancing act of showcasing our authenticity, but also being mindful of the genre that we're writing in. Because, as I'm sure you probably have research on your own, that each genre, or I should say the readers in each genre, have certain expectations of how a book is supposed to go. Now, I'm sure you'll definitely heard a lot of authors say that, oh, we shouldn't write for our audience, we should write for ourselves. Yes, that is true, but we also have to be mindful of the audience that we are writing for. We don't want to be too new. We don't want to be a carbon copy. It has to be a sweet 50-50 split, but that's very difficult to do. So ultimately, Raven, for you, as you are in this final stage leading up to publication, do you have a good idea of your audience, and how difficult was it keeping this tightroping act balance in mind when figuring out where your book truly fell under in the publishing world?
So when I first started writing it, I had an inkling of what I wanted to write under what genre I wanted to write. Definitely wanted to write some type of fantasy. But fantasy is a very broad term. It can end up in
Hmm.
pretty much any genre. So then what I did is, I wrote the story. I realized that there was definitely romance elements, but there was also kind of horror elements. But I didn't know if that was going to be full horror or if it was going to be more like thriller or psychological. There was things that I wanted to figure out, and I had inklings of, what it might be. But what I did is when I gave it to my beta readers, I told them, look, I believe that it's this genre. I believe that this would probably be the age group for it. I need you to tell me if I'm right or wrong. If I'm wrong, that's great. I know before I publish, let's fix it. And I had several beta readers, and pretty much all of them agreed that yes, this is going to be romance horror, and this is going to be for adults. There might be some older teens that might enjoy it, but it's almost definitely adults, just because of the triggers, the content warnings, and different elements that it has.
Hmm.
And some people even said, in your SEO, you might want to include historical because of the era that it happens. This happens
Right.
in 1912. So the 20th century, early 20th century. So there's certain things that would be true of that era that people are looking for that would not be true of a romance story that would be taking
Mhm.
place modern.
Absolutely, very true. And you also wrote in your blurb of Nothing But Bones is that it has this haunting Brothers Grimm style. Now, for those that have not read any of the Brothers Grimm's fairy tales, there is kind of that expectation of what the story might be. So, in adding that, were you a little hesitant or apprehensive to include that in the event of people may not make that correlation, or people won't get that comparison between your story and the books of the past?
So, funnily enough, that wasn't in my original blurb. That was told to me by several different beta readers that they felt it was
Really?
similar to like a Brothers Grimm style.
Oh,
And
okay.
once, okay, it's a fluke, it's just their personal thing. But I had like three, four people tell me, and I'm like, okay, this is something that I should include because people that are looking for this will probably find it in the book.
Ah, okay. So it was your readers who kind of gave you the encouragement or told you of the comparison. That's amazing. That's really, really cool. And speaking of readership, this actually goes into a fan question, an old fan question. I'd like to hear your thoughts on. And in your opinion, Raven, which do you think garners the most traction for authors? Writing for your audience and genre, or writing for your readership and readership group?
So that's a tricky question. Um, when you're starting out, you do need to build that audience, but you don't want to build it on false promises. Because
Mm,
if you write for a certain type of person, that person's always going to look for your work, which is great. That'll build funds, it'll build an audience base, it'll build a lot of different things. But if you then write something completely different that you wrote for yourself, they may not like it. Your sales won't be good on that. They may not continue to pick up your books. So I would say write for yourself, but keep in mind if you are doing it to sell, you need to include certain, trending things, pop culture references to make sure it sells and you can use those SEO words. Or are you doing it more as a hobby? If you're doing it as a hobby, you don't have to worry about that too much. But you
mm,
have to decide why and how you're writing this book. For me personally, I had a story that I wanted to tell, and it just so happened to fit really well in a new genre that's currently growing. And it happened to fit really well with the brother Grimm-style that helps with my SEO and word searches and things like that. And that's great. And I do try to keep that into consideration. I did tweak certain things so that it fit it better, but at the end of the day, I did end up writing for myself, and I did my best to then match it so that way I would have readers that are also interested in what I'm interested
absolutely. And speaking of readers and beta readers, I'm very curious. When you told your family that you were going down this path, what was their initial reaction like? And also talking about readers, what has the reaction been like for them? Very positive, very critical, or 50-50 split?
in. So with family, mixed reactions. I definitely have a lot that's like, oh, that's a great hobby, but make sure you still have your 9 to 5, which I get, totally get. It's the world we live in. But I also have like family members that are super supportive of it. Because they like to write themselves, and so they understand. I'm going to be sensible about it. I'm still going to pay my bills, but this is passion that I have. Will my friends and whatnot, some of them don't mind reading what I write. Some of them won't read what I write because they're not interested in the genres that I write in, which I respect. I'm not going to force them to read my stuff.
Right.
Um, and then with readers, I did start to build a fan base because I did have some episodes on an app that unfortunately got shut down. They wouldn't make that blah blah blah. And so I do still have that fan base, and so that fan base is happy that I'm getting into something that doesn't purchase again because they
Mm.
liked my writings beforehand. So they're happy that soon they'll be able to have another one of my books.
All right, Raven. And now we're going to go into a series of rapid fire fan questions. I'm really eager to hear your thoughts on these. The first one, themes or tropes in fiction. And this could be your preferences while reading or writing, or a mix of both.
So in reading, I've definitely read a lot of the Megaverse. I don't know if you know what that is, but I've definitely read a lot of that. I definitely like romantasy. I like fantasy. I like high fantasy specifically. Like the more magical you can make it, I love it. I also personally love isekais and lit RPG novels. Writing, I like to write fantasy. I like to write horror, romance, obviously. And I like to try to ground it in reality. There's only a handful of my series that are like really high fantasy, definitely on our world kind of things. But I do have some series that are very much, this could be an alternate universe of our world.
Nice. Very, very nice. Next one, and this is more on the writing side. So, as an author, in your opinion, which of the five physical senses is the most difficult to emulate in storytelling?
The most difficult, I would say, would possibly be the sense of smell,
Mm,
because what some people prefer in scent, other people hate. And the same could be said of taste. However, there are certain things everyone's going to recognize the flavor of. So that one's not as difficult because there are set expectations, whereas smell is not necessarily set.
All right. Very nice. I don't think I've gotten smell as much as an answer. I've gotten touch, sight, and a little bit of taste, but I don't think I've gotten smell. So very nice. Very, very nice. Next one. Ooh, I'm eager to hear your thoughts on these. This is a two-parter. In your opinion, most underrated theme or trope and most overrated theme or trope in fiction.
Most overrated, although I will still read it, is overpowered main character, and that's because I read a lot of isekai. It's definitely like overrated, but it's part of the genre, so it's kind of like the trashy TV. You know what's going to happen. You're just going to read it or watch it anyways. Um, the most underrated trope, I would say, would be the hero to villain arc or villain to hero arcs.
Ooh, that's a good one. That is a very good one. And here are some fun little ones. So, in your book, Nothing But Bones, if you had to choose an original song to be an to be added as a Spotify playlist, what song would that be?
Um, Probably. There's this one instrumental. It's like haunting cello.
Ooh,
I found it on YouTube. I can't remember the artist at the moment. I have it saved on a playlist, but that one just because the vibes it gives, the flow of the music, it's amazing. Like what they did with that instrument was amazing.
awesome, awesome. And a follow up to that, if your book was ever adapted into a limited series or movie, who would you want to play the main characters and be the director?
So main character maybe Johnny Depp because he's so versatile. He's had a
Ooh, I can
lot of
see that.
different roles, and with that particular character, it does have a lot of makeup at one point. So you still have to be able to portray, the character is human, but the character is not human. I think he could do that very, very well. With the female lead, um, that's a tough one because there's a lot of really good actors that could do that. Um, I think that would be kind of open because there's a lot of actors there. I think that could do that one really well. Um, and then to direct it, uh, maybe Steven Spielberg or Del Toro has a really interesting film style as well that could work well.
I could see that. I could see Spielberg or Del Toro. I would also say, oh, what's that director's name? The director of who did Nightmare Before Christmas and The Wednesdays.
Oh, he works with Johnny Depp all the time too. Oh my God. I know exactly who you're talking about, and I can't think of his
I can't
name.
remember his name either, but he would be a good director for that because he loves making very gothic
Tim Burton.
movies.
Tim Burton.
Yes,
That's
Tim
who it
Burton.
is.
Tim Burton would be perfect for Nothing But Bones. He would be perfect for if this book was ever made into a movie. He'd be a perfect one. Him along with Guillermo del Toro and Spielberg. All right. And the last of the rapid fire ones, and this one's a very important one. In your opinion, well, I'll give lead up to this. As authors, we love to write. We love to write. But when it comes to writing stories, we know we have to end it sooner or later. And that can be a very difficult thing, especially if this is our first book or a book we're very proud of. So, in your opinion, Raven, which is probably the most difficult for an author to do? Knowing when to stop writing or knowing when the story is finished?
I think when the story is finished is probably the most difficult because you have that in every genre. You have spin-offs, you have sequels, you have short stories that didn't need to happen. The story was perfect without those, and those just kind of muddied the waters or were a cash grab. Um, And we see that in like Lucifer, they could have done without that very last season, I think. I don't know if you've seen that show on
Oh, the
Netflix.
last season of Lucifer with the daughter?
Yeah,
Yes, I have
that
seen it.
one, like it was a good story, but I'm not necessarily sure if it was needed. Although the ending was very good. I did like that ending. Um, and then another reason it may be hard to find the true ending is because we're like, oh, well, I want to talk about this character. I want to talk about this character. I want to talk about this character. You don't need them. You don't need them. You don't want to overload it with too many characters. This isn't a video game where you can have that. This is a book.
Yes, absolutely very true. And now we arrive, Raven, at the final two questions of this amazing author interview. So, in this interview, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about your style of writing, what led you down this path, your creative background in music, acting, modeling, being a sketchbook artist, and more. What you've learned about the industry thus far, what you hope to achieve with Nothing But Bones. So, at the end of the day, when Nothing But Bones does get published, what do you want people to take away from your style of storytelling? And what piece of advice, word of wisdom, would you want to instill in the next generation of authors?
So, what I want people to take away from my style is a story that they can't forget. It's something that touches them in the gut and they will thank me for it. The word of wisdom that I could give to somebody, I would say, just write it. First draft is not perfect. It's just to get it out. It's just for you. All of the drafts after that, okay, that's when you start tweaking. But the first draft, it's going to be horrible. It's going to be a dumpster fire. People are going to come out from nowhere. And you're going to have lines that make absolutely no sense and tons of pauses. But it's fine. It is meant to be that way. Let it be that way. Don't edit it in the middle of it. Just write it. If you absolutely have to add something, add it. But you'll clean it all up later. The first draft is going to be horrible, and that's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said, Raven. Beautifully said. And with that, viewers and listeners, we conclude another amazing, incredible author interview here on the channel for the month of December. I want to give a huge thank you to our guest, Raven Diamond, for coming on the show, making her official debut, and hopefully not the last time we see her on the channel. Now, Raven, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect? And when can people expect the publication of your book by the new year?
So I do have a Facebook fan page that I'm revamping. I also have a website that I'm building that is ravendiamond.com. And I'm also building the website for the publishing company that I'm making, which is vampiresburst.com. So they definitely can check out that stuff for all updates. And I will be making the Substack. I'm still in the process of making everything. Um, and this book I expect to be released early 2026. I'm just going to make sure that all my I's are dotted, T's are crossed for all the paperwork stuff on the publishing side, and that I have all the necessary ISBNs and everything else.
Excellent. I will link all that sorry. I will link all that down below in the description of this video, viewers and listeners. And as a final reminder, Decimus, the Wolf of Rome, will be going on sale in a few days, December 24th, Christmas Eve. So you still have a few last minute hours to get it pre-ordered for yourself or make it as a great holiday gift for someone that you know. I'll attach that link down below in the description of this video. It'll be the Goodreads link that will give you access to Amazon and Barnes & Noble, where it is available for pre-order. And again, viewers and listeners, if you would like to see Diamond back on the show for a follow-up interview, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this video, and I will try to make it happen. And who knows, maybe for next Halloween, I can get Raven Velasco, Raven White, Stephanie Kelmer, Sabrina Vorman, and many other of the Gothic literature world for another Halloween-themed episode, or maybe a special episode of the Writers Hub. If you'd like to see that episode, comment, subscribe, and share around the world. And as always, viewers and listeners, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill, signing out. Wishing you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas. And be on the lookout for the final interview coming out tomorrow. After that, I'm going on a much-needed vacation, and you will see me all in the new year in January. So take care, everybody. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.